Hello friends, I'm delighted to welcome you back once again to the second part of the presentation of this e-learning series where we are discussing how to harness the power of data analytics for assurance and compliance. In the first part of the presentation, we discussed how we can use information technology fundamentally from the perspective of data analytics to empower enterprises and provide value addition. This is the official disclaimer. In this part 2 of the presentation, we'll be looking at how can auditors use data analytics to demonstrate value. In the first part, we looked at the era of digital transformation, and primarily, if you look at one message I wanted to convey was that technology is a challenge for enterprises, but technology can also be a solution for enterprises. And as chartered accountants, we can provide value addition by being creative problem solvers because we understand the business. And when we understand technology, we can definitely provide solutions to the challenges or problems of business. The second aspect covered what is data analytics. We said data analytics fundamentally is all about using computer as a tool. Data analytics is also referred to as computer-assisted audit tools and techniques. We also understood what is the impact. We are flooded with data, but starving for information. So it becomes imperative that we learn how to harness this power of data using the tool of data analytics, using the techniques of data analytics. So we looked at the impact of data analytics, that in this era of digital disruption, which is caused by disruptive information technologies, it's become imperative that we enable enterprises to ride the technology wave. For that, it's important, as chartered accountants, we understand what is this information technology from the working perspective and see how we can use data analytics. In this presentation, the focus would be on how auditors can use data analytics to demonstrate value. I'll cover some of the key features of data analytics. Let's get to the crux of the matter. What can CAs do with data analytics? Now, this slide gives you the 6 key things which you can use for data analytics. First, using data analytics, we can establish facts. For example, we would like to know whether all the transactions have been correctly and completely accounted. For example, there are 5,000 invoices which have been accounted, whether these are correct, whether the reports from the technology, from the application software establishes this fact. Second, we can explore hunches. For example, I have a doubt that purchases have been made from a particular supplier at high rates. I can explore this hunch by querying the data and picking up exceptional purchases at differential rates. We can draw inferences. For example, we have made sales of more than 10,000 transactions during the year. I would like to know what is the pattern of sales, who are the top buyers, what is the maximum value contribution by each of the sellers. So we can draw inference from the data. We can obtain insights. For example, I have the value of inventory. I would like to know what is the slow moving inventory and what is the value and the volume and who has purchased it and how long it has been lying. I can get insights into this data. I can also confirm hindsight. For example, this inventory, when was it bought? Who bought this inventory? What is the rate at which it was bought? And why this has not been sold? So we can get insights or hindsight about the past incidents which happened. We can also validate in terms of the future. If the same trend continues as far as the purchase is concerned or as far as the expense is concerned, what will happen to the enterprise? This is what is called as forecasting or predictive analytics. So data analytics, if you see, can be used from 3 different dimensions of perspective. One is from the point of hindsight, to look at what happened in the past, how many, how often, and where did it happen. We can also use it from the perspective of insight as to where is the problem, what actions are required, and why is this happening. And we can also look at the future to predict what if these trends continue, what will happen next. This slide gives you the complete perspective of how data analytics could be used by chartered accountants. This from a publication of the IASB. So the usage of data analytics, if you see here, is broadly about using audit procedures to obtain audit evidence. Data analytics can be used by three different audiences. The first audience is the auditors, where I said you can use it for obtaining audit evidence. And this could be used for the purpose of risk assessment. You'd like to focus on high risk areas. You'd like to look at the material factors. You can identify specific data on which you want to focus on. You can perform analytical procedures. For example, what is the sales pattern between the last year and this year? What is the expenditure pattern between the last year and the current year? What are the purchases which have been made product-wise, or the sales which have been made customer-wise, and you can analyze it based on year to year. You can also perform substantial testing, which is substantive procedures. For example, you would like to identify samples and perform testing of the samples. So you can pick up specific data for the purpose of detailed testing. You can also perform compliance testing, which is also called test of controls. All this is possible by using data analytics. So this is from an audit perspective. The enterprises can also use data analytics, and they would be using data analytics primarily from the purpose of dynamic MIS. They should be able to get MIS based on specific requirements. Most of the software have MIS or reporting systems or querying features. But using data analytics, you can dynamically generate various types of reports depending on what you require, whenever you require. Data analytics is also a common tool used by fraud investigators for the purpose of probing into the data for specific purposes. As I said, the key functions of data analytics is multiple types of data analytics software which have varied types of features. Auditors can use the reporting, the querying features of the applicant software. This is also data analytics, which means data analytics doesn't mean that you need to use a specific or a specialized software. When you use the reporting and querying features of application software deployed in the enterprise, then also you're using data analytics. There are general audit software which can be applied for multiple purposes and is designed for specific use of data analytics. And that's what we'll be covering in this particular presentation. So let's look at what are the common features of data analytics. First step is to get the data in the right format. Most of the cases when you want the data, it may not be in the right format, so you need to curate or purify the data. Second, you profile the data at a macro perspective to get an overall perspective how the data is structured, how the data is formatted. For example, you will get overall statistics of what is the number of sales, what is the value of sales, what are the number of purchases, what are the number of suppliers, what is the total value of the purchases, what is the value of the purchases as per the customer or as per the product. So this is what is called data profiling. And then you analyze the data, which means you query the data from a specific perspective. For example, I would like to classify the data based on the customer. I would like to summarize the data based on the product code. So you can analyze the data depending on specific requirements. Then you'll investigate the data depending on your specific requirement. For example, you'd like to find out what are the outliers. What are the sales which are 5 times more than the average sales? What are the purchases and what are the difference in the rates of the same product items? Then you also need to document what has been done. Then you'll also look at utility software, utility features which are available in software. Then you also have various tools in the software. Let me give a quick overview of these functions, then also show you through a software how these functions are organized in a software. Curate, as I said, refers to transforming the data in a standard structure so that it is usable for data analytics. The most important task you need to do is to get the data ready for audit. In most of the data analytics, whether it's a low end or high end, you find a lot of time is spent to get the data in the right format. Data, when it's analyzed, has to be in a standard structure. I'll show you a little later what is meant by a standard structure. For the time, you can just understand that when you say standard structure, which means the first row will be the headers, and then each of the rows will have the data. You also need to ensure that each of the columns have a specific names, and these are standard names or unique names. The curation of data ensures that the data is formatted and purified and it's ready for use in data analytics. So what are the functions for cleaning the data? This could be removing specific characters, for example, alphabetic or numeric. For example, you have the customer code, which is alphanumeric. You'd like to remove the alphabetic character and perform duplicate analysis based on the numeric. Or you'd like to do a sequence check on the customer data, removing the numeric. You'd like to transform the data in a specific format in which you want. You'd like to delete specific data or convert the data into specific format, and you'd like to transpose the data. Let me show you one example in a data analytics software as to how the curate function is. Now, if you see here, this is a curate panel. In the curate panel, now you have this menus: remove, delete, transform, convert, format, and transpose. So in the remove, you find here, you can remove non-alphabetic characters, non-numeric characters, multiple spaces. Like that, you have multiple functions. Similarly, if you look at the delete function, these are standard functions which are available in Excel also to some extent. But in a data analytics software, which I'm showing you here, this is an add-in software to Excel. You can remove objects or images. For example, you imported some data from the internet and that has got various objects or images. Now you'd like to remove this. You can remove this at one shot. You'd like to remove the top X rows, which has got headers which are not required, or blank rows. You'd like to remove the blank rows in between. Now, you know, in the case of filter, if there are blank rows, you'll find that Excel is not able to filter beyond that particular row. When it encounters the first blank row, it considers the end of the data, unless you select the full set of data. So this software should be able to identify all the blank rows in the complete set of data and remove them. You can also identify internal, external links and remove them. There could be hidden rows and columns, you would like to remove them. Like that, there are specific functions for curating the data. You can also transform the data, which means you have formatted the data and you'd like to extract only the visible cells. Or you'd like to fill the selected cells. Some of the rows are blank, so some of the columns are blank. You'd like to fill it with the data which is there in the top. You can do that in one shot. You can also merge multiple cells. You can segregate cells based on font style. You can fix the date into correct format. You can harmonize the data. Now, if you look at harmonized sheets, now this has got various functions for formatting the data in a correct format. Now, this gives you various functions which are there for harmonizing the data. I'll show you in the next part of the presentation some of the functions, specific functions of data analytics. Here, I'm just giving you an overview of the key features. Similarly, when you look at convert, these are the features which are available for convert. Next, you also have formatting the data. You'd like to get the data, convert the data into standard format in lowercase, uppercase, or title case, or sentence case. You'd like to wrap, merge, or auto-fit, or you'd like to change the sheet name. You can also transpose the data. For example, you have analyzed the data. You would like to remove the polarity, which means you'd like to remove the negative or convert negative to positive. You'd like to remove the delimiter or reset the delimiter. You'd like to have a columnar from the tables. Like that, you can do various types of transforming the data. This is all about curating the data. Now let's go to the second important feature, which is profiling. Profiling refers to the act of analyzing the data contents to get an overall perspective of the data, to get a macro perspective of the data. And this is one of the first things you do before you start the audit, because this will give you a complete macro perspective or the big picture approach of the data. It helps you in validating the data at a macro level and assessing whether data is correct and complete. So some of the functions of the overall statistics of data could be, you will get statistics of the data, you can search based on specific parameters, you can group or rearrange data, and you can also use specific functions for stratifying, summarizing, classifying, aging, etc. Let me show you in the data analytics software. Now, if you see, this is the profile panel. In the profile panel, you have the data menu. In the data menu, you have functions of stratifying, you have summarizing, totals, classification. Like that, you have multiple functions. Similarly, you also have details where you get the column statistics. I'll just give you one example here. When I say column statistics, now you see, I should be able to get a complete perspective. It says the statistics, this data contains numeric, data, and character. I'd like to get statistics pertaining to the numeric. I select all and I say OK. I should be able to get at one glance the statistics pertaining to the invoice number. Here I select only the invoice number. Let's see what the result you get. Now, if you see here, for the invoice number, you will get the average, negative if there is any negative invoice numbers, what are the number of negative records, What are the total number of negative records? You get at one glance there are three blank or null records in the invoice number. Okay, it gives you the minimum value and the maximum value. It also tells you if there are any inconsistent format of data. So this is how you get at one glance complete perspective of the data. Let me give you the statistics pertaining to column statistics. Let's look at the sales and understand the statistics. I'm just going to pick up the sales and I want the statistics of this. I select all numeric statistics. I'll say OK. Now this gives me the complete picture of the sales column at one glance. Now if you see here, I get the average of the records, average of negative records, average of all the records. It gives me if there are any negative records, number of positive records, what are the total number of records. Now it sort of tells me what are the number of distinct values. And you'll also get the negative, sum of positive. Like that you get the complete perspective of all the data at one glance. Let me show you one more example of statistics. We'll do it for a character. So this is about data profiling, how you can profile the data. I'm going to date. I'm looking at the invoice date. Now you see just at one glance, just by clicking this, I should be able to get a complete understanding of how the data is structured and what are the pattern of sales month-wise. I'll also be able to get to know what are the sales which have done based on the day of the week. Now you see here, I got the total number of records. It gives me what is the earliest date and what is the latest date. So it means I know based on the cutoff concept that all the transactions which have been accounted are belonging to that particular year only. It also gives me what are the sales for each of the months. This gives me a pattern of the sales. So I can probe further and drill down and see the values. I'll also know what are the sales which are made on each day of the week, like Sunday, Monday, etc. So you find in this case, the sales has been made even on Sunday also. I can drill down and get into the details. Okay, so this is how you can actually do it, data profiling. You can also get column properties, you can get clipboard, you can highlight based on specific factors. So each of the data analytics software has various features. So you need to understand depending on the need. And even MS Excel also has a lot of features you can use. So what is important is to look at data from that perspective, from the analyst perspective, from a business perspective, from an assurance perspective, from the control perspective. That's what is important. So here you find the search, you can find and navigate to a particular column. You can also extract hyperlinks. You can replace multiple values. And this is all about the profile function. Let's go to the next function. Here we look at analysis, which is the most critical aspect of data analysis. This refers to examining the data in detail to discover essential features by breaking the data into specific component, by grouping the data, by regrouping the data, by identifying and reviewing specific features of the data. I'll show you examples of functions. What are the functions available in this feature? This could be identifying gaps or identifying duplicates or identifying unique data or identifying outliers, identifying whether data belongs to a specific format, identifying the changes between two sets of data. For example, I would like to look at the sales of 2 years and compare them based on the sales made to customer wise or sales made product wise. I can also do sampling, filtering, and split data, or I can also apply fuzzy logic. Now, if you see here, this is the analyze panel. Okay, you have various menus: identify menu, changes, sampling, fuzzy match, sort and filter, and split sheet. So identifying, you can identify duplicates. For example, let's say I want to identify duplicates on the invoice number. I can also do identification based on multiple factors. I've just said identify duplicates. Now on the invoice number, at one glance, there are about 6,666 records. You find you're able to get the duplicates at one glance. Immediately you get to know you'd like to have this data in Excel. You click on Excel, all the duplicates are copied, and this becomes a part of your audit documentation. Okay, this is how simple it is to do data analytics once you know how it can be performed. So if you look at here, again, identify duplicates. You can also identify uniques. You can remove the duplicates. You can also do same, different, which means the name and address is same, but the PAN number is different. Okay, you can also identify the gaps between the invoice numbers. You can identify outliers. For example, I would like to identify sales which are beyond a particular value, 5 times the average. I can also identify the data as in a particular format. For example, you have a format of a PAN. You can specify the format, identify whether all the PAN number go with the same format, or you got the customer number or the payroll number or the employee number. You can find out whether the data is going in the same format. Are there any data which is not in the specified format? You can also identify sequence through the changes, whether the date is following a particular sequence, whether the numeric sequence. You can identify changes and compare sheets. You can also perform various types of sampling. So each type of data analytics software has their own types of sampling. So you need to understand and see what is the type of data analytics available and using depending on your needs. You can also perform fuzzy match. These are some of the examples. I'll not be getting into the details. I just want to give you an overall flavor of what are the key features of the data. You can sort and filter. You can also split the sheet based on, for example, you got the sales of the year. You'd like to split it based on month-wise or quarter-wise. Or you have the sales which is made. You'd like to split this data based on the product rate or the GST rate. You can split this. Now we have finished the analyze. Next we come to investigate. Investigate refers to observing or querying the data in detail. So this involves systematic examination of the data by making a detailed inquiry or search to discover facts and insights so that we can arrive at a conclusion. So what are the functions which are available here? For example, you can perform a Pareto analysis, ABC analysis, quadrant analysis, cluster analysis. You can do MIS, etc. You can also perform relative size factor. Let me show you. For example, here if you see investigate panel as analysis as a menu. In analysis, we got different types of functions. Similarly, you got MIS. Then you have in MIS, if I just click on this, you will find it gives me the MIS based on the date. Let's say I would like to have the sales for the MIS, and I'd like to have the count, sum, and the average, and I'd like to have based on day of the week. I click OK. I should be able to get MIS. This is what I said is dynamic MIS, which the auditor can use. Now you find here I get the sales as per each day of the week. It also gives me the pattern of this. So based on this, I know that Wednesday is the lowest as per the value of the sales is concerned. I can sort it. Now you see Wednesday has got the lowest percent of sales and Tuesday has got the maximum amount of sales. Okay, this is what I said inferring insights from information. The computer, the software can process the data and provide you the information. Now what insights you draw depends on what's your requirement and how you analyze this data, how you probe and investigate this data. You can also query based on specific factors. You can query based on numeric, character, or you can identify exceptions, or you identify a list of values and pick up. For example, you'd like to know whether any transactions have been entered on a list of holidays. So you got a list of holidays which is given. So enter the list of holidays or copy the list of holidays, and you want to check at one glance, are there any transactions happened on these holidays? You can get this result at one shot. This is what is called as probing or investigating the data. You can also get statistics. You have Benford law, trend analysis, time series, etc. You can also perform relate, which means you can join two files. I'll later in the next part of the presentation, I'll show you a demo of the 20 top functions where I'll cover some of this in detail. So now here when relate, we're actually comparing or joining two files and understanding the relationship or the link. We also got various templates. You can validate the patterns of various standard patterns like PAN, TAN, or GSTN, or it could be any others. You can also do validate GSTN. You can use the Loon algorithm, authentication check. Like that, there are various types of templates which are readily available. You can document. One of the key features of data analytics software is quite often it automatically documents what has been performed, and then you can use rerun function or refresh function. You can also use the audit log or indexing. Let's see. Now if you see here, we have got documenting. Okay, in documenting, now we got this file. You can count the words, you can read aloud, you can also get the file properties. You can also index the sheets. For example, I click on this index sheet. Now you find it is created index where it has got a list of all the files. It gives me at one glance what are the number of rows, what are the number of columns, what is the number of cells. It also gives me the hidden sheet which are there. The data analytics software also has features whereby you can unhide the hidden sheet at one glance. Okay, so you can go to any particular sheet. So for example, I click on PAN, it gives me the list of the PAN. So I can go to any specific function. It also automatically logs. For example, it gives you the workbook history. Okay, what are the workbooks which have been accessed? You can open the specific file from here. You can also log the files. So it maintains an audit log in terms of what are the functions you used. Okay, this becomes a part of your audit documentation. This could also be useful for your peer review. Next, let's go to one interesting function which you want to perform. For example, I was talking about the rerun task. Now we see we perform this MIS function. I want to rerun this function. I just double click. I can get the result of that function once again. So now it has performed and shown me the result once again. For example, your staffer performed analysis. He wants to show the function again. He can just rerun the function and you can see what is the function which has been done. So this is what I talked about. You also sample data which you can use for the purpose of analysis. You can also perform refresh, which means the last function which has been performed will be rerun. This is about the document. You also have various utilities. So these are functions for tagging the data based on rows and columns, and you can also use it for protecting. Now these are functions which are also available in Excel. Now if you see the utilities, now utilities, you can perform various functions pertaining to tag the rows. You want to tag selected rows which you have watched, or you want to copy the tag, move the tag. You can perform various types of tagging for the various functions you perform. You can also identify, split the data based on specific column. You can rearrange the data in a specific format. You can make duplicate columns, insert specific columns, or rename columns. You also have functions specifically pertaining to worksheet. For example, you'd like to combine worksheet, delete sheet, format sheet, match columns, like that. There are multiple functions which are available as a part of the utilities. And the last part is the tools. These tools refers to specific functions for simplifying the routine tasks which complement the functions MS Excel by accessing the larger volume of data in a faster way. For example, if you see here, this is a utilities function. You have, as per the rows, tools, we can navigate to the data. For example, I am in a particular workbook. I can navigate and go to a particular workbook. If there are multiple workbooks open, it gives me these are the workbooks. I can directly go to a specific workbook. See, I can directly go and navigate to a particular workbook. So it means it gives me easy option to go to a specific data. For example, I have a workbook which has got 30 worksheets. I don't know where the data is. I can just navigate to the specific worksheet using the navigate function. I can also hide or unhide based on specific columns or sheets. For example, if I go by sheet, now if you look at the function here, it will tell me what are the sheets which are hidden. So there is one file called journal which is hidden. You also have something called very unhide. So this is a file which is hidden, which cannot be seen in Excel. Okay, this can be seen only using a macro. So this data analytics software will also have features so that you can unhide and get this. You also have various types of print setup. For example, you would like to rearrange the print area for all the sheets at one shot, you can do it. You can remove the page breaks for all the sheets at one shot, you can do it. Like that, there are multiple functions which are available. You can also use what is called as auto open. For example, whenever you're working, you work with a complete set of worksheets, which you quite often do again and again. So you can set that. So whenever you open Excel, by default, those 3 or 4 files which you're regularly opening will be opened by Excel when it opens Excel. Okay, this is what we covered in Excel. So if you see broadly, we had 7 features. First is curate, where you purify the data. Second, we profile the data to get the macro perspective. Third, we analyze the data, which means examine the data in detail to discover essential features. Fourth, we investigate to probe the data or query the data. Fifth, we have document. And then sixth, we got utilities, which refers to using various features or functions to complement. And then we have various types of tools to enable, or this can also be used as Excel time savers. So the next part of the presentation, we'll look at the top 20 functions of data analytics, where I'll give you not only an explanation, but also walk through with explanation of how you can use data analytics much more effectively. Now, using the Pareto principle, you know the 80-20 rule. Now, if you know this 20% or 20 functions of data analytics, probably this will cover 80% of your need. And I'll also show you to you how easy it is to learn and use data analytics using a software. This is the list of the 20 functions of data analytics which you're going to cover with specific examples and a demo. And this will be covered in the next presentation. I hope through this presentation, you got a clear idea that data analytics skill sets is definitely the key differentiator. And DA skills help CS to remain updated and relevant and add value. And auditors can definitely use data analytics to demonstrate value. So thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you in the next presentation.